As long as we don't say any of that stuff online. Oh shit! Are we live?
All right, folks. Welcome to the Starship Troopers stream. Because the internet was talking about Starship Troopers and most of it was wrong. So we're going to be pedantic jackasses this month.
Oh, are we ever?
What do you mean the internet was wrong?
So
okay, the media literacy people were wrong.
You're hearing. I've heard a lot of comments on Twitter crying about media literacy of people who have never actually read the book that this movie was allegedly based on. So don't talk to me about literacy when you literally can't read. I'm talking to you, internet straw man.
I thought you were talking to me. Because so I know you decided to go back and reread the book and all that stuff. I read the book like 10 years ago. I was in high school and then reread it again right as I was getting out of the Marine Corps. But in preparation for this stream, I decided to not read the book so that I'm on the same page as Paul Verhoeven. So.
Well, you've read it before, though, so you're actually streets ahead of Paul Verhoeven.
You're still ahead of you can't quite stoop to that level.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So it's like it's been at least a decade since I've both either seen the movie or fucking read the book. So I'm just going to be completely wrong about a lot of things, but act like I'm right. So Paul Verhoeven.
So like usual, though. I mean,
yeah.
Do you equate RoboCop with Jesus? That's the level you need to get on if you want to be like Paul Verhoeven.
No. Wasn't Showgirls some sort of deep philosophical thing and not just TNA?
Yes, he said that he wanted all the sex in the movie to be like the sex isn't erotic, it's capitalistic. So that's why it looks like just people having seizures the entire fucking time.
See, I'm only ironically making this titillating film, guys. I'm not actually. You're wrong for enjoying this.
They literally hired him to make Showgirls because they wanted to show that like X-rated or not X-rated NC-17 movies weren't just
which was
and
just
so
a fancy way of saying X-rated. Yeah.
They wanted it to be an NC-17 movie so that they could actually market the rating of NC-17 to be like, no, it's for adults, but that doesn't mean it's just flat out porn. So then they got Paul Verhoeven and he just made it flat out porn the entire fucking time.
And it flopped because it was just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, if people want to watch porn, they're just going to watch porn. They don't want to watch porn with a bad story. That's regular porn.
Tying this into Starship Troopers, like this was still back in the late 90s. That's why everyone's like, oh man, but that shower scene, it was like, dude, it's one of the most fucking tame nudity scenes in film, period. You just happened to see it when you were 8, and that's why you're still obsessed.
It wasn't even like striking for the time.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the late 90s.
Cinemax existed. I mean,
this was 1997. Like movies going back to the 70s had tits in them all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Look at half the action movies and thriller movies through the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
there was way more.
And
they would find just as contrived of reasons to put boobs in there too. You know, here's some
nobody was saying that they were necessarily on a higher level of Verhoeven's hackery. Just that he was not being original in his hackery.
Yeah, Verhoeven was the one who was trying to say he was on some kind of higher level. Like, well, I'm doing this ironically. No, you weren't. You didn't make RoboCop ironically.
I want to know what Paul Verhoeven's lower level is.
Showgirls. I mean, did he make a worse movie than Showgirls? I mean, somebody in the comments check IMDb. What was his worst movie?
Basic Instinct is pretty fucking bad. I'm just gonna put that out there. So,
was that Verhoeven too?
Yep.
I mean, RoboCop was a fun movie. It's a dumb movie. A lot of the plot elements revolve around things that don't make sense from a logical. Like you got a gang of guys who are basically terrorists holed up in this steel mill, so you send in 2 cops armed with pistols. Nobody would actually do that. That's dumb. But that's how you get your plot set up, right?
Yeah. I mean,
the best part about
setup-
RoboCop is just how accurate it is to Detroit at literally any time period.
And that was unintentional.
Yeah. You know, like, because a remake got made like 20, 30 years later, and they're just like, we got to update this. Where should we set this movie instead of 1980s Detroit? Just current Detroit, then. Fucking sure. Nothing's changed.
Honestly, I have not actually seen either Showgirls or RoboCop because I saw Starship Troopers back in the late 90s, and I had actually already read the book. So it was already like, this is stupid.
Well, I don't think
even before I knew the whole it's a satire of fascism, which if you think the book is fascist, you're definitely a commie.
You mean the one where they have more individual freedoms than at any given point in history? The one where like taxes are like 3%.
Oh, like
and the entire society is basically based around the entire political structure is based around personal responsibility.
RoboCop is definitely the book. RoboCop is based on is definitely fascist. You know, have you ever heard of Mein Kampf? Boom, checkmate.
Is that what it was based off of?
No,
I was gonna say I
don't think RoboCop was based on a book. It was just,
I don't remember Jesus ever being mentioned in Mein Kampf, but apparently RoboCop is Jesus.
For those in the chat, yes, there was an interview where Paul Verhoeven said that RoboCop was supposed to be an American Jesus. Get it? Because he kind of came back from the dead, even though Jesus wasn't a cyborg.
Sewage water.
You know, also the main bad guy, the guy played by Red Foreman, you know, he was like Joseph Goebbels because they both wore glasses.
That's a real line. People are going to think you're making fun of him.
I am not. There's an interview. You can look it up. It's like from The Guardian or some British newspaper.
Yeah. My favorite is not a single person in all of history and existence has ever watched RoboCop and been like, you know, getting a lot of who is it? Himmler vibes from.
Oh yeah, Himmler, not Goebbels. Yeah,
I'm getting a lot of Himmler vibes from Kurtwood Smith over there. You know,
you
cackling madman with a shotgun, telling them
with the shotgun. Yeah, that's just like Himmler. Himmler was notorious for that. What? But it was the.
So I guess the question is, which is worse, Verhoeven's pretensions of deep satire and symbolism, or Jodorowsky's idea that his Dune was going to fundamentally change the universe?
I mean, both of them have a cadre of online knobs who agree with them, right?
So, I would say Verhoeven is worse because Jodorowsky, there is a 0.0000001% chance that could actually happen. There is, after seeing what Verhoeven did with Starship Troopers, there is literally no fucking chance that like it is as highbrow as he said it was. So one's lying, one is just very, very confident in himself.
Plus, I mean, are all the J-Man, are all the guys who think that would have been a good Dune movie, are they all communists? I mean,
well, they're
at least all on drugs.
Yeah. Jodorowsky was a fucking like bande dessinée artist, so like he's already on his own horse shit.
And it was the 70s too, so
yeah, there
was definitely a lot of drugs involved. Unlike Paul Verhoeven, who I'm sure never touched the stuff.
Well, he's supposedly an expert on fascism because he grew up in Europe during World War II. Oh, wait, he was born in 1938, so he was one when the Germans invaded Poland. I'm sure there's a lot of insight there.
Yeah, he was a toddler when the Germans occupied his country and probably has only the faintest of memory. You know what it is
I mean, he still has a toddler's idea of fascism.
I think
also a fucking 50-year-old or 60 or however the fuck old he is.
I think Paul Verhoeven just likes making gory, ridiculous action movies full of one-liners, but he feels bad because deep down he wants to be like the sophisticated artist who's above all that. So he he tells himself that, no, this is satire. I am mocking this genre that I make all of my movies in and have gotten rich.
But that's also why his fans try and say that it's a deeper satire and like more eloquent art than it really is, because they feel bad for enjoying a schlocky fucking sci-fi original movie fucking here action romp.
People are trying to say, like, they're arguing that, like, no, you missed the satire of Starship Troopers. Like, no, I didn't. It's not subtle. It's not subtle in the least. They gave them Nazi uniforms.
Yeah, that's why I'm wearing this baseball jersey. It's the only gray uniform I had. So,
you know, they even got like the same kind of field cap style, the kind of the crease in the front that the Germans and actually the Swiss and the Finns also wear. But it's pretty distinctive, you know. That wasn't an accident. But the satire was just a failure because it was dumb. Like people were like, what are these oh, it's the 1997. We're making fun of Nazis. Like, okay, nobody likes Nazis. It's the 90s.
But even then, claiming it was a fascist society is the worst self-own they could have done. Because everything in that society looked way better than like the actual fucking democracies of the 90s looked.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was clean. Everybody was happy. There was racial equality.
There was no crime.
Equality of the sexes. Women were in the military. They were in the infantry. You know, it was G.I. Jane, just like that movie they made that same decade, right? You know,
but that's what I mean. Is like when you claim that that's fascism, then somebody who fucking lives in a shithole and wants like a clean, no crime, equal fucking society is just gonna be like, oh, all right, I guess fascism's great then.
Well,
that's kind of what a lot of the left has been claiming, that if you don't want crime tearing your neighborhood apart, you're a fascist, you're a Nazi.
Now they're going even further. Now it's if you don't want to be exterminated on a species level by bugs, you're a fascist.
That's the same dumb argument Jon Stewart made in response to Tucker Carlson's schlobbing Vladimir Putin's knob in that cringe interview, right? He was like, well, if having, you know, nasty, unsafe subways is just the price you pay for freedom, like, that's a terrible argument, John. That's like the worst possible argument. You're making you're making an argument for totalitarianism there. You can have a decent subway and also have freedom.
Like terrorist bombings is just part and parcel of living in a city.
Yeah, it's just part of the excitement of living in a big city. You know, it's like,
they've actually some like.
No, that was Sadiq Khan, from the mayor of London, who said that. So.
Well, also, and who's that stupid stoner actor who's
Seth Rogen? I know exactly what you're talking about. Where, like, bro, this is part of living in LA. Somebody will break into your car. Somebody's broken into my car like 13 fucking times.
Yeah.
So, I thought Mike was going to break into somebody's car. So.
No, I had a big burp, and I didn't think I needed to share that with the stream. So,
well, you kind of did anyway. So,
not burping is fascism.
So I hadn't actually read the book since I think 2004, about 20 years. So I picked up my copy and I started going through it again.
Oh, is that the one with the Clone Wars fucking cover?
Yeah,
where it's clearly from Star Wars Episode 2. Fucking
kind of looks like the drop ships from that. The ones that kind of look like Heinz. Yeah. But
my copy's in the other room, but I've got the cover art that I used for the thumbnail for this video. That's the edition I've got. So,
but there are some things I noticed going over. I mean, this book is a product of its time and place, and I'm not saying that because we need to contextualize it, but it was written in 1959, I believe, and some of the disparity in technology presented in the book is just kind of quaint by our standards, because sci-fi writers of that era did not predict at all how computers are going to advance and how ubiquitous technology would become. I mean, they have interstellar starships and these super powerful, the mobile infantry marauder suits are practically like, they have the capability of like Gundams. But, the guys are like still signing papers and taking fingerprints, and they have like secretaries, and it's very 1959 feeling in a lot of ways.
Mike, maybe he just was showing how fucking antiquated bureaucracy will always be.
See, I wish that was the case. In fact, one of the biggest suspensions of disbelief you have to take for Starship Troopers is how efficient and how functional the bureaucracy in the Terran Federation is. That is one of the most unrealistic parts right there, is that all this would just work that well.
Well, even then, they still had the line about like there's only two sizes for the uniform, too small and too big. Like their logistics are still fucked.
Yeah. Hey,
I noticed. Robert Heinlein. Go ahead.
The point can be made. We're already seeing how a lot of this digital stuff is already falling apart. Stuff's just getting deleted that shouldn't be deleted. Stuff isn't working. So maybe they just went back to hard copy stuff because it was easier to keep track of.
See, if you were like gonna like make an honest effort at adapting Starship Troopers into like a TV show or something, it'd be really interesting to explore the world building, because none of that is really gone through in the book. It's presented as is through the point of view of the character. He doesn't really get into much of how the world got this way, the origins of the Federation. It's only glossed over in the broadest terms. And you could have a lot of fun with that, fleshing all that out, I think. But it's also interesting. Heinlein has a very distinctive writing style that carries through all of his books, and it's more noticeable in his earlier works, especially if you go back to like his young adult stuff that he wrote, like Half Spacesuit Will Travel, and stuff he kind of cut his teeth on in the early 50s. But Rico in the beginning of the book talks like he's from Leave It to Beaver. He even says golly at one point to his father. It's adorable. I don't know if that's how the old Grandmaster thought teenagers actually spoke at that time.
No, he just mistranslated. He just mistranslated the Tagalog that they were speaking.
Not only that. If you read a fair bit from that time period, that was the colloquial English that got into
print
literature at the time.
Well, Mike, what would have been cringe? Him using the current publishable slang of teenagers, or him trying to make up his own slang for teenagers of what he thought it would be like in the future?
He did actually make up quite a bit of his own slang for the book, though. Yeah. It was his own version of military slang, like on the bounce. I don't think that was ever actually slang. It comes from the way the
Marauder
power suits move, because they hop on their jump jets. But I just thought it was interesting.
That's just their version of no cap, bro.
There was also there was a term used by World War II fighter pilots where if you got above another fighter, you bounced them. I'm not sure if that translated necessarily into Heinlein's vernacular for Starship Troopers, but
you got to remember that Heinlein was of the World War II generation, so this is what his worldview was kind of shaped around. He was a young, dumb communist before that, changed his mind, came to his senses, and then after the war, he became like a weird free love hippie type guy.
Well, so his politics absolutely mirror whichever wife he has at the time.
How many times was he actually married? I'm going to look this up.
I want to say 3. I know it's at least twice.
Oh, we could probably do an entire stream over made-up curse words in sci-fi.
They're so bad.
Frack.
Here's the thing. Frack could have been okay if they didn't say it every fucking 3 words.
Yeah. And everybody else seems to have picked it up since Battlestar Galactica too.
Well, it was because like between Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, and Firefly, like those were the first 2 shows that like really showed that, hey, you can just make up new slang and get away, or new curse words and get away with it, and you don't have to worry about like censoring yourself. And so then everybody
did it a lot.
Yeah.
So it looks like he was married twice. If I
Twice?
read this right, yeah.
And then he fucking decided that marriage wasn't a thing, right?
Let's see. They were made. No, he was married until he died.
All right.
Yep. Also, apparently, he invented the waterbed.
It helps you grok.
Well, he was discharged from the Navy in 1934 because of pulmonary tuberculosis, and during a lengthy hospitalization, inspired by his own experience while bedridden, he developed the design for a waterbed. So, well, there's your fun fact for the night, kids.
He decided, look, I'm in the Navy one way or another, right? But anyway, yeah, his idea of this theoretical society of the Terran Federation wasn't fascist back then, isn't fascist now, and even though they changed it significantly in the movie, still wasn't fucking fascist.
Yeah, but the way it's presented in the book, right, is when the book begins, the Federation is at peace. It's not even a war going on. And there are people complaining in the book, like one of them was a doctor who thinks the medical men should be actually running things. I mean,
yeah, then you have to be told about like the technocracy wars that fucking.
Haven't we heard that recently though? How the medical establishment should be running everything.
You mean a particular malignant dwarf who claims he represents science?
But basically, what happens is everybody who lives in the Federation or an associated state has the same rights. They're taxpayers. But if you want the right to vote, you have to put your money where your mouth is and do at least 2 years of federal service.
Vote or run for political office.
Yes.
You can't have the franchise, period.
The political franchise, yeah, because the reasoning given in the book is that without that, people can vote and they don't have to put anything on the line for their right to vote. And they're not held responsible for how they vote, except for the long-term consequences of their votes, which, as we see in the real world, usually don't happen in the generation that votes on the things. I mean, especially in a large economy like ours, it can take decades for the consequences of dumb policy to fall upon your descendants. So
the other idea, though, was that it solves a problem of when you separate your scholars and soldiers, you're defended by idiots and run by cowards. So,
and it's universal. Anybody can sign up, and as long as you are mentally competent to do so. It doesn't matter if you're physically capable, and it's not limited to military service. They will find something for you to do. They're required to.
But the big point was that it had to be hard, dangerous, and unpleasant.
They even say
they were trying to get you to quit every step of the way. They weren't. It's not like fascist propaganda. Like, hey, join the fucking state and fucking be one of us. It was like, don't you fucking dare. Like,
yeah, it was the opposite of what they show in the movie, where they're like, join now, enlist. Like they're at the beginning of the movie before the war starts. They don't know what to do with all the people that keep wanting to sign up. One of them complains that it's become fashionable to join just to get your citizenship, just so you can kind of flex on people to brag about it. And they're trying to discourage that because they don't have enough bullshit make work for all these people to do. So but they even say if you are crippled and in a wheelchair, they will come in and they'll make you count hairs on a caterpillar by feel if they have to, because they're required to. Constitutionally, you have a right to serve. They will just find something unpleasant and dumb for you to do. And a lot of it is just work camps, like they're terraforming Venus or digging tunnels on the moon or testing life support equipment on Titan. Because you got to test it somewhere, and somebody's got to test it. Or they'll even do like medical experiments on you if nothing else. So you got that going for you. But yeah, anybody can do this, men and women. There's no racial discrimination.
They also couldn't pick you out. That was the other thing. It's like you had to voluntarily quit in order to get.
If you deserted, this comes up in the book because there's a deserter from Rico's basic training. They don't even bother pursuing deserters because it's just considered another way of just people weeding out people who don't want to be there. They only really pursue it if you actually desert in the face of the enemy, right?
Or you like steal their shit. Fucking.
Yeah.
Or the guy who deserted and then
he kidnapped and
tried
to ransom a baby and then killed her.
Yeah.
He was brought back by the authorities and they hung him right there in the military camp. So in that case, yeah, they cared about that one.
Well, hey, a fucking executing kidnappers and baby killers,
which I fully support. I would fully support the UCMJ being, amended so that if you are a service member and you go out and kidnap and kill a baby girl, that you should haul your ass back to base and hang you in front of your unit. I don't think that's fascism. That's frontier justice right there.
Well, it depends. Are the uniforms gray?
Well, actually, in the book, I just read this section. Actually, they describe their uniforms as light blue and maroon. So I'm imagining now like a marching band uniform.
Yeah, that's.
They look like the fucking New England Patriots.
That is not the color scheme I would choose for a bunch of badass life takers.
No. So, yeah.
But he was named, so.
And also, the Federation is it's a global organization. They've taken their cues from militaries all over the world, so it's possible there's some. Now, you look at dress uniforms of some, foreign military. Some of them have got some real flamboyant colors going to them, with plumes of feathers and whatnot coming off of them. Maybe there's some of that going on. He doesn't really describe in any detail a lot of the equipment or the uniforms or the weapons or any of that because
it's not actually about that.
No, Starship Troopers is a philosophy book disguised as a science fiction adventure novel.
Right, which if you want the military sci-fi armored suits, killing aliens and all that shit, go read Armor by John Stakely, which is a fantastic book in and of itself. And it was written purely because John Stakely read Starship Troopers. He was like, I really like the action scenes. Wish there were more of those. And so then he just went and wrote.
I mean, you could make an argument, actually a solid argument, that this Starship Troopers is an example of message fiction that everyone has got derided much of late, but it's message fiction done well.
Yeah.
I think, and it doesn't make any bones about it being message fiction, but there's still enough of an interesting story in there that it doesn't get bogged down. It doesn't, There's a way you can do message fiction well, but it takes a lot of talent.
The other thing is, I think, and people don't get this because they didn't read it, but he goes out of his way in the book to be like, look, this might not be the best way, but it's a way. So
one of the exact lines from the book is something to the effect, exact line I say, then something to the effect of, we do this because we maintain the system for the reason anyone maintains anything, because it works.
Yeah.
They
also say like a citizen is no more smarter or capable than anybody else. It's just that they decided to do it. Yeah. And that's what gives them the edge in politics.
I mean, to my mind personally, if you're not going to have like universal political franchise, then the only other way to do it that's actually fair is to have something like that where anyone can volunteer and you have to earn it through the same means.
Yeah, Mike confirmed as fascist right there.
I guess
Because
so.
fascism doesn't mean anything except not communism.
All the anime avatar weirdos that hate on me on Twitter will be surprised. But,
well, a lot of those anime avatar guys like Starship Troopers because Starship Troopers was made into an anime in 1988.
Well,
and
they probably like the movie because they think it's fascist. You know.
Yeah, they think this actually is fascist.
They agree with the communists that it is fascist, but it's good because of that. You know. Just like they agree with the communists that authoritarianism is great as long as they're the ones doing it. A lot of interlocking points of contact there. But the movie is good for a couple things. It's good for memes. The memes are fantastic.
The whole movie's a meme.
It is. It's just like the Star Wars prequels. And
Yeah,
now when I said that in my Twitter thread,
what were you saying?
It's probably about on the same level of quality with the Star Wars prequels.
Now, when I said that in my Twitter thread about this, I had people coming at me like, how dare you impugn the Star Wars prequels? I'm like, look, all due respect to Razor Fist and the others that are trying to rehabilitate the quality of the Star Wars prequels. Like, I was there. I saw them in the theaters. You ain't fooling me. Well, because the sequels were worse doesn't mean the prequels were good. I saw Jar Jar Binks from the big screen. Okay? I saw the I hate sand. I don't like sand monologue in real time.
Oh, man.
But again,
the thing of it is, because I've seen edited version, like fan edits trying to salvage the prequels. And if a bunch of the cringe is taken out, you still can't. The second one is actually worse than the first.
Well, the second one was always worse than the first.
It's even more so. Okay. Once you take away all the cringe, the forced juvenile, pre-juvenile humor with sneer quotes.
Here's the difference between Starship Troopers and the Star Wars prequels. Is the Starship Troopers dialogue isn't anywhere near as bad. Like, I'm not cringing at the dialogue from the Starship Troopers movies. I'm cringing at the fucking the fact that this looks like it's Buenos Aires 90210. That's what this shit is.
Yeah, somehow Starship Troopers with a fraction of the budget being made by Paul Verhoeven managed to have more competent actors than fucking Star Wars. You know, because Hayden Christensen was not a good actor in that. I mean, God bless him. He tried. You know what?
I think George Lucas just might not be a good director because all the people from the original Star Wars movies were just didn't Harrison Ford say I'm gonna fucking put you at gunpoint and make you read your own lines
and like the man said in the comments there, Starship Troopers had Michael Ironside. Michael Ironside is a badass. He has screen presence.
Yeah. Well, somebody else said Starship Troopers has better TNA than the PG fucking kids movie. Yeah, thanks, man. I would hope that Star Wars did not have as good TNA as Starship Troopers.
This gives me a good idea. This gives me a good evil idea.
No, we're not making a fucking NC-17 rated Star Wars.
I am pretty sure you can already find that on the internet. That was not my idea. My idea was let Paul Verhoeven direct a Star Wars movie.
I mean, it couldn't be too much worse than the director already turned out.
Let all of his defenders defend that. Have fun, kids.
Well, the Empire was already fascist. That's a little bit more clear.
It's a little more defensible too.
It's not because of the uniforms either. It's because they dissolved the Senate and fucking was they were actually doing fascism.
Authoritarian rule, autocratic rule.
Yeah.
Blowing up planets just to make a point.
No. It's all because their soldiers were called stormtroopers.
And the jackboots might have been a little clue there too, but it's like I was saying though, Starship Troopers is more of a political philosophy novel that has a story in it.
It really is.
Versus an actual military science fiction novel. But what it did is it helped create the military science fiction genre, separate from just general science fiction, which was popular at the time.
Well, yeah, because military sci-fi before that was just like early 20th century Marines with ray guns. That was it. That's where we get the term Space Marine from, although Games Workshop would like you to forget that.
About to say, I think you mean Games Workshop invented space and Space Marines and Marines. They should sue the Marine
sisters.
Corps.
Not even of battle, just sisters.
Yeah.
Just those. They ripped off everything they ever built, and then
they sue you for copyright.
It's like
that's funny. Those new aliens you introduced look an awful lot like xenomorphs from that movie. No, they're Tyranids, and we invented them.
It's like, can I get away with saying this? It's like one of those ugly racist stereotypes that people have about Jews, but they're true about Games Workshop. They're thieves, you know. They're greedy.
They're more like Soviets, really, because they steal everything and then insist they invented it.
Guys, what you got? The correct term is just sitting there right in front of you. They're British.
Also gross, yes.
Yeah.
But it kills me though is that people have to claim that it is smarter than it really is because they are ashamed of enjoying something that's just fucking stupid but enjoyable.
Well, I think
it's like that's what's going wrong with Games Workshop too. Is they're trying to make fucking Warhammer 40K like serious now. It's like, no, man. It was a heavy metal album cover. It was purposely ridiculous. Just that's the mentality you got to have.
No, there can be serious stories told in that setting even before they got stupid with it.
Right.
Gaunt's Ghosts is the penultimate example.
Yeah. But the orcs were still orky.
Yes. And that's why you don't find orcs in Gaunt's Ghosts, really.
Yeah.
Because the orcs is going to work.
I mean, and then Caiaphas Cain went the exact opposite route, where it just took the most serious enemies and made a joke, like a funny adventure around it. So.
Yeah, I mean, the orcs in 40K talk like soccer hooligans. You know, it's Games Workshop really started taking their own lore too seriously, and their lore is silly.
Well,
they designed to be silly.
They killed off the dwarves or the squats.
They brought them back.
Just to bring them back with all the fun parts taken out. Where before they were just like biker minor hooligans. Not hooligans, but they were much more a commentary on like the biker gang fucking lifestyle. And then they got rid of those, and then they're just like, they're just factory workers now.
So they were Nick and Jason's dwarves from Forgotten Ruin. Just Germanic bikers.
Yes.
That happen to be short.
Because Nick and Jason know what's funny and what works and what's cool, as opposed to just like, they're like a corporation. Isn't that cool, guys?
Interestingly,
no, because GW isn't cool, and you're not cool for working at GW. So actually, make some cool stuff and shut up.
Somebody in the comments mentioned Joe Halderman's Forever War. I haven't read it, but I understand that it was kind of written as a rebuttal to Starship Troopers. But from what I understand, Robert Heinlein himself actually quite liked it and complimented the author on it, even though it was kind of a different take on the similar subject. It was
that probably pissed him off so bad.
I hope it did. I've never been able to finish that book. I hope it pissed him off. I hope he went and got just miserably drunk.
Forever War. That's how long it took me to finish it.
Finger guns. Now, Hammer Slammers. I did want to take a moment to talk about David Drake and his Hammer Slammer series, because he's on the Mount Rushmore of military science fiction authors. And he passed away recently.
Mount Rushmore is fascist.
I met David Drake at LibertyCon in 2018, and He's an incredibly nice man. He actually met my wife several times because she used to be kind of like a con helper for years when she worked the con circuit, and she would pick her up from the airport, and he just happened to remember that she was an entomologist and would wear socks with bugs on them. He was just that nice. He was a very kind man. I told him that
Or maybe he was anti-fascist.
or anti-bug.
He was taking the bug side against the Federation.
Well, I don't know if I would say that entomologists are on the bug side. They kill a lot of them, so.
Oh, just wearing bugs on your socks, though.
But I remember I told him that I appreciated Hammer Slammers more after I'd been to Afghanistan, and he appreciated that. It's a very different kind of story. It doesn't. Hammer Slammers has none of the philosophy that Starship Troopers does. It is just about the ugliness of war, and it's kind of it's legit. I mean, he was a Vietnam veteran, and he just made an analog for armored combat in the future. Instead of tanks, they're hover tanks. Instead of guns, they're power guns. But everything else.
He straight up said at one point that Hammer Slammers was just the 11th Cav with ray guns.
Yeah, but
that was his unit in Vietnam.
Yeah, but but the stories and the attitudes he will take and the ugliness that he presents, but also heroism and sacrifice. It's all very legit. It feels real. They're good reads, but some of them are hard to read. Some of the stories are not pretty. But that's war. That's what war is.
In some ways, it's a bit like rewatching Full Metal Jacket after being to war.
Yeah.
And you kind of realize that this was intended to be an anti-war movie, but that's just the way the world is.
So before you go to boot camp, the best part of Full Metal Jacket is the first half. After you go to the combat, the best half of Full Metal Jacket is the Vietnam part.
Yeah. Because you realize real quick that, it is kind of like that.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily it's so horrible. It's the greatest thing that we need to end forever. Like, you're never going to end it. It's just the way it is.
And different writers have had all kinds of different takes on it since the beginning of the written word. And obviously you've gotten all perspectives on that in science fiction too, and that's okay. Heinlein has his in his book, and then you have the different, just straight up action focused military science fiction, and you have the more. I don't know how I would describe the Hammer Slammers type books. It's a little bit. There's a lot of action. They're story driven, but they don't glorify war. It's very very no bullshit about how it's presented. They don't paint like a rosy or romantic picture of it.
Well, that means that he's satirizing fascist propaganda about war.
Yes.
Because in the Starship Troopers movie, everything goes terrible, and that's in the movie. But apparently, this is still supposed to be prima facie fascist propaganda.
Yeah, like this dude on my Twitter account, a couple of people actually. There was, and not just on talking to me on Twitter. I saw this all over last week when all this discourse started because Helldivers 2 came out, and they decided we're going to be dumber than Paul Verhoeven on purpose this time. But they were people have this elaborate headcanon for the Starship Troopers movie about how the whole thing was meta propaganda about how even the story parts of the movie were actually fictional propaganda, and it's obvious that the bugs didn't start the war, and the humans none of that is shown in the movie. That is all just in your head.
Well, didn't you know the bugs couldn't have sent an asteroid to Earth because they don't have faster than light travel, even though they're on multiple fucking planets and expanding?
I think the simpler explanation for all that is that the filmmakers didn't plot out their technology and things very well.
Well, yeah, the answer can't be that Paul Verhoeven is a hack.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. There's a planet full of alien bugs, that have very limited ranged weapons, so they invade it with light infantry with no fire support instead of just nuking the dog shit out of it from orbit.
I agree with Evil Penguin that you are a moron magnet, because what are you doing on that part of Twitter dressed like that?
Right. You know me. Just asking for it.
Yeah, I remember a review of the movie that summed it up perfectly. It's like, I could kill the entire mobile infantry with a Tommy gun and a handful of grenades.
Yeah.
Because
the bugs had less than that, and they still fucking whooped their ass.
Yeah, the way that the mobile infantry is shown in the movie, it's not even like halfway decent light infantry tactics. They're just running around in a big mob.
Yeah, how can it be? How can it be a fascist organization when they have Soviet-style tactics?
The man
How
with
dare
the
you
rifle
insult General
shoots.
Zukov like that? He beat Hitler.
The man with the rifle shoots. When the man with the rifle gets killed, the man behind him picks up the rifle and shoots.
That got retranslated into nobody quits. Everyone fights.
It's like, yeah, like they had no fire support. They're just landing on this planet with light infantry. The minimal air support is shown.
Don't forget that all of their ships in orbit are so close together that they're actually colliding with each other.
Now, there was...
You got to save on gravity somehow, Pete.
There was like a collision mentioned in the book, I believe, but the starships in the book are moving so fast to get in and out of orbit. They have to do like 8G braking maneuvers, and that's why the landing ships have very short windows on the ground. It doesn't really explain why. My headcanon on this is that they're trying to avoid like anti-starship weapons, so they can't linger for too long. But at least it's explained somewhat versus these big lumbering starships just kind of when they had all the time in the world to change course.
Now, this was also prior to. This was also written prior to AirCav.
Yes.
So, the book itself is missing, from our perspective, decades worth of tactical developments.
Oh yeah, they just went straight up with the paratrooper stuff.
And this was still even in the dawn of manned space flight, and he's trying to make up techniques for like orbital troop insertions. So I'm willing to cut the man some slack.
Yeah.
But even then, there would be an argument of like, why would you need air assault capabilities when you have the suits that can do pinpoint airborne or spaceborne operations? So, like the drop ships are there to pick them up; they're not there to insert them.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, the drop ships don't drop them on. They get fired out of a gun, basically, in a capsule that starts shedding layers, and the armored layers that protect the guy inside, but also as shielding for re-entry because they're moving really fast.
And to fuck with anti-air.
Yeah, they break off into pieces and they become like decoys also. And he actually put a lot of thought into that little bit of technical detail.
Yeah, so I mean, like as much as he couldn't see every detail, he was actually ahead of the curve on a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And I would hazard to guess that a lot of our developments in certain technology is because a lot of the people in the think tanks were huge fans of Starship Troopers.
And there's a lot that he developed that is not necessarily existing technology now, but still has become sort of permanent tropes in the military science fiction genre. Drop pods, powered armor.
Yep.
And some of it, like some of the technology he presented in the book too, I think, because he was right. He's come from an era of like, he's coming from an era of big idea science fiction where authors would write these books with these kind of sweeping scope. They were still trying to wow the reader with stuff, right? I mean, it started off with simpler things like the first men in the moon type thing, but then you had like Asimov writing the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire in space, and it took like 30,000 years, right? So he he was thinking that it's the future. It's hundreds of years in the future. What if infantry, the basic infantryman, was so advanced he was basically more than a tank could do now? He has this armored suit that can fly through the air and launch nuclear weapons, and he's basically a super weapon all by himself. And
he also had to reconcile the fact that you don't have the numbers to do the giant World War II style, just absorb casualties with swaths of infantry storming the beach and shit like that. Like, if everybody has to be voluntary and everybody is made to quit before they even get there, you're not going to have the numbers to do large scale infantry assaults. You're going to have a couple of squads that are dispersed over miles and miles of terrain, single-handedly wiping out the target.
Which, I mean, on the face of it, is a horribly inefficient way to wage a war. But that was the premise he was working with, so that's what he did.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's such a fascist fucking organization that they're on the verge of extinction and they still don't fucking institute the draft.
As fascists are known to do. They're really
even in the movie they don't do that shit. It's like, let's see. We're fucking losing every battle we're fighting. We just lost 8 million in fucking Buenos Aires. Our initial invasion, fucking, how many was dead in the first?
100,000 dead in an hour. I remember from the movie.
It was like, should we implement the draft? Fuck no. But make sure everybody's boot camp squad bays have the best billiards tables and hot tubs and dartboards and fucking video conference centers. We got to make this shit be like a fucking nightclub, bro.
I remember I went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood in 1999. I remember for the first phase, the first 3 weeks, like, you weren't even allowed to have the milk, right? Like, they had little cartons of milk at the chow hall. You weren't allowed to have, like, you hadn't earned the right to drink milk yet. Like, fucking pool tables and dartboards and shit.
Yeah. We had a guy who was like a couple weeks ahead of our platoon get cycled into our platoon because he stole a packet of peanut butter from the chow hall. So
I believe it.
I didn't see this firsthand, but I heard a story of a guy. You know, the guys who were like, they would dip and they couldn't. Yeah. They have their Nick fits without it, so they would try to hide it. We had to carry 2 canteens in our LBE back then, so you drink water out of one and they'd spit their dip into the other. Well, every so often the drills would make us drink a whole canteen of water, just chug that shit. That chlorine, fucking chlorinated Fort Leonard Wood water. It tasted like pool water. Right? And then you'd hold it over your head when you were done. But every so often, we're like, okay, now drink the other one. I guess this young man was faced with a choice then,
Well, we had to do that too. You had to fucking down both of them and then hold them upside down to make sure that you drink.
The version of the story I heard is he tried to go for it, but he didn't get very far before he puked. So.
Hey, man, anything to get that Nick fix,
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of the boot camp scenes, though, Mike, I was trying to go through Twitter to find your initial post that kicked all this shit off. And one guy responded, the infamous co-ed shower scene was, according to Verhoeven, because fascists lack sex drive. Yet he has Rico and Dizzy hooking up later in the movie. Paul was like 5 when the Nazis invaded Poland, so he gets a 5-year-old version of what the Nazis are. Because I assure you the Nazis did not lack sex drive.
And even that was being overly generous because he was 1 when the Nazis invaded Poland.
Because Paul Verhoeven was just a Euro lib from, like, he's a boomer Euro lib, right? So he's from like the 60s free love generation. So, we like free love. So obviously the people we don't like sex because we like sex. Like, everybody likes sex, you moron.
If the Terran Federation were a democracy, that would have been an orgy in the shower instead of just fucking getting cleaned up after a fucking drill. Yeah.
Oh, make sure you wear your shower shoes, gang. It's fucking, you think regular military showers are bad?
Yeah, that was my thing. Everybody.
That was usually going to help you there.
everybody was freaking out about the fucking co-ed shower scene. I was like, that's the most unrealistic part about it. Not it being co-ed showers, but the fact that they're just taking their time, having conversations, having fun. There's no like fucking 2 drill instructors throwing fucking bed frames at them, telling them to hurry the fuck up.
Screaming the 10-second countdown.
Yeah. Well, they start from 60, but it takes 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Well, I remember in our pre-deployment training for Afghanistan, they sent us to the Silver Flag training site at Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida, because the pine forests of coastal Florida is obviously the best place to train for the mountainous regions of Afghanistan, right? So we were living in these little 6-man, like 12-man little shacks, and they had like a shower building there. It had the big open prison showers, right? There was like a pillar going to the ceiling with 4 shower heads around it.
Yeah.
In case you really wanted to shower with your bros. But the floor wasn't even, so water would just stand in some places. And this is Florida in July, right?
Gross.
So it would be standing. It was like it would smell. Like you
the
wouldn't want to.
Mosquitoes are just breeding on you.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. You didn't want to wear shower shoes. You wanted to wear like mucker boots or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Like LL Bean fucking fishing boots.
There would be like these little crabs too, about yay big. You'd see like scurrying around in there. Like,
No, that was from Jenkins.
oh,
No, it was from Wagner, more than likely. There's a select few people who got that joke.
Oh yeah.
This is an unrelated story, but I worked at a place, a chemical weapons demilitarization facility that also had an on-site shower. Right, the site wasn't active yet, but once it became active, you were supposed to shower before you left because you were notionally handling chemical weapons. Nobody really used it since we weren't active yet. But one time, we were getting ready to leave. There was a big grasshopper with this long, like, worm thing coming out of it, right? And we were like, what the hell is that? I remember I took a video of it. And that's actually one of the first times I talked to my now wife, because I remember I sent her a video asking, what the hell is this? We were wondering if it's fallen out of somebody's ass, right?
You're a bug lady. What bug is this?
Yes, unironically, yes. That was exactly what I did. It turns out it was one of those things that takes over the body and makes it go to water. So
what is that? Like a cordyceps or something?
I can't remember if it was that or was it a different kind of bug, but yeah, it was some kind of parasite that took over the body of the grasshopper and tried to drive it to water so that it could spawn more. So there is the real bug menace, you know.
Yeah, maybe they'll make 2 shitty video games out of it. Oh, but can we just stop and appreciate the transparency of how the death of the author concept only works one way? How, like when you're saying like, hey, I know Paul Verhoeven wanted this to be a satire of fascism, but it doesn't work, and it's actually just not a fascist society. And it'd be like, no, he said it was. It'd be like, okay, but like death of the author means that I get to ignore what he says. Or does that only work when you're saying that like, no, Tolkien didn't really write it as a Catholic book? Fucking.
Is Paul Verhoeven dead?
No, he's still alive.
Does it even? Okay, you're gonna have to explain this death of the author concept.
Death of the author is what fucking college-educated commies use to subvert whatever the fucking original intentions of a work of fiction is. So if C.S. Lewis writes Chronicles of Narnia, right, as this very overt allegory of Christianity and the Bible, some fucking left-winger can come in and just be like, well, actually, it's about trans rights. Because, yeah, and then fucking be like, no, it's not. C.S. Lewis is on record as saying exactly what this is. It was like, no, death of the author means that the work has to stand on its own and nothing he says really actually influences what we can take from this book.
That makes no sense. The author said what it was about. How can you not take that into consideration?
These are the same sorts of people who see a generally libertarian society that only just limits the franchise to those who've conducted federal service, whether military or otherwise, and say that's fascist, because they don't know what fascism is aside from anything that is not being run by Mao or Stalin.
I mean,
but that's the thing. Why do we have to take Verhoeven's word that this is a fascist society in his movie versus Heinlein's word that it's not a fascist society in the book?
Yeah, good. That's a good point. And like, also, the Federation that's presented in the book is less authoritarian than Israel or South Korea, which have universal conscription for men. And actually, I think Israel has it for women too. I'm not sure, but but yeah, South Korea, like all men have to do 2 years in the army. So
I think some of it is like you guys saw the video I sent of that Arch did on the Cinema Wins take on Starship Troopers and how absolutely utterly retarded it was.
Is Cinema Wins by the same guy that did Cinema Sins?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think it was some guy that actually wanted to like counteract the Cinema Sins guy.
I used to like Cinema Sins like back in 2015, but he got really kind of cringe as time went. Many such cases.
Literally, none of the movie reviewers from like 2015 have stood the test of time, except maybe Jeremy Johns and the pitch meeting guy. The fucking
yeah.
But fucking yeah, there was one thing. He went on the Asteroid Truther thing, where he was just like clearly the bugs couldn't do this, therefore it was the Terran Federation that did it. And it's just like, now you're just making shit up.
Yeah, that was headcanon. Like, there's nothing in the movie to give you even the slightest hint that that's the case. So
he was like, you can tell this is fascist or a satire of fascism because I don't know. From what I'm looking on the screen, war is pretty bad. It's like, everybody kind of knows you don't have to be a fascist or you don't have to be anti-fascist to know that fucking war is bad. Second, context matters. Because if you're facing fucking an extinction level event that can only be prevented by fighting back, war ain't bad in that case. It's a necessary evil in that sense.
I think that's the part of the book where Heinlein was trying to make you think, though, right? Because it was like, okay, you have these morals, and you have this idea where, okay, you don't want to be a bloodthirsty conqueror because you're a nice person who was raised with Western values, and you were taught that's bad and all that. But now you're faced with this race of alien arachnids with fucking laser guns who are crossing the stars and want to wipe out the human race. What are you going to do? You can either wipe them out or you're going to be exterminated. Yep. And that's a tough question. That is a shitty situation to be in. That is a survival situation. That's one of the themes of the book is human survival, and how it's kind of like one of our base,
we're in it for the species, boys and girls.
He said one of the lines in the book is that our human morality, is derived from survival instinct. Now, you can agree with that or not, but that's the philosophy that the author was operating from. So,
well, the thing is, if you're dead, you can't be alive to live out your morals.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But at the same time, he's talking about more of a civilizational survival thing too, because like the whole book's about people sacrificing their lives for their families and their loved ones back home.
No, wait, did you say families? I guess it is fascism then.
Only fascists have families, yes.
Yeah.
All those Soviet propaganda posters of like the big Soviet man with his family and his many children were just those never happened. It was erased like that guy with Stalin,
Well, those
in Russia, not in China.
The funny part about those posters is those kind of came because their initial attempt to abolish the family immediately after the revolution turned out to be an absolute unmitigated disaster, and it was change course or the whole thing is going to go down in flames.
Whoa. You can't change your political ideologies because you're just facing extinction.
They
That's fascism.
Well, new economic program says what?
I wonder how far into the whole communist revolution they got before I realized that, wow, this Marx guy who we're basing on, he really didn't know what the fuck he's talking about. We're really in trouble now. We got to do something. And then Stalin just started murdering people. So that was something that they needed to do.
To be fair, if you read Marx, he was all about that shit so long as they were the certain kinds of people.
But I do wonder if there was like a moment of realization when they were like, none of this actually, this is all bullshit. He didn't know what he was talking about. We have to, and they just started like, okay, we're just going to be just straight up totalitarians. Because
that's when it stopped being real communism.
There were a couple of instances where that happened. Again, in the first years of the Bolshevik Revolution, basically the family was outlawed. And things started rapidly unraveling. And they had to basically do a 180 on that.
That's crazy. Imagine doing that now.
Same thing economically. Lenin introduced the new economic program in the 1920s because they were all going to starve to death otherwise. And the new economic program basically meant opening up trade with the West because, again, they were going to starve to death as a country.
Why is that such a common trend in communist revolutions?
I mean, all their theories say that they should have good productivity, right?
Yeah.
Because it's an ultimately anti-human theory.
It must be. It
must be because of bugs
saboteurs and the farmers not working hard enough.
Yeah. But that was the thing, though, is that Heinlein said, like, hey, the bugs are communist, but they evolved for it. Like, their entire existence.
Straight, yeah, it is also a line straight from the book. It's communism on an evolutionary scale. They don't have individuals. They're a colony species. They sacrifice their soldiers like we sacrifice ammunition. And, I mean, they're not really arachnids. They call them pseudo-arachnids. They don't actually... He describes them as they look like a madman's conception of a monster spider or something like that. And,
yeah, but that's the other thing, though, is that they aren't like the bugs in the movie where
they have weapons.
They're animals.
They have laser guns.
They're more like the Covenant, but with Zerg numbers. So
yeah.
And I can make those comparisons because both of those franchises were tough Starship. Well, they were heavily influenced by Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
So, as
there's
every other sci-fi thing you've ever read.
I don't think the skinnies ever actually had a political system described. They were just allied with the bugs.
Yeah, and then it doesn't. They're only kind of really mentioned in the first, like the opening chapter of the book when they're doing like a smash raid on the skinny planet because they want to discourage them from doing something.
They never even did. I don't know if I'm remembering this wrong, but it was like the skinnies weren't actually aligned with the bugs, but they had sort of like a mutually beneficial, we won't fuck with each other deal. And so they were allowing bugs to go through the arachnids to go through their space and get to human outposts easier or something like that.
Honestly, I don't remember that it ever even got that detailed on it.
Okay. Yeah. That might have been,
it did say
there was a fucking Nickelodeon 3D cartoon of Starship Troopers where they actually had the suits, although it was more like Master Chief style than fucking, like Titanfall, which is really what the Marauder suits were more akin to. But people have fond memories about it, but I don't think they actually watched the series all the way through because I did, and it was like it was cool in some instances, but it's still a fucking kids show, and like that part really cringes it down for you.
Also, I mean, they made them kind of interesting looking in the cartoon show, but in the book they're described as being like 9 or 10 feet tall. That would have been really awkward in the show,
Yeah. But and then probably, as much as I don't want to give any fucking credit to the Japanese, the people who got the suits the best were the 1988 anime.
I will say, I will say this: Japanese anime is kind of cringe unintentionally, right? They're not. It's cringe because it's anime, because of anime tropes. They didn't come at this like, oh, we're going to subvert the meaning of this. They
Yeah.
wanted to make a good Starship Troopers show. So I'll give them credit for that, right?
Yeah.
It looked like it was pretty crappily animated from the little, like,
I mean, it was 88, man. Like, fucking anime was not as anywhere near as big or developed as it is now.
There were a lot of scenes where it's like, it's just a static picture and the camera's moving around it to give the illusion of movement, but
that was basically all anime up until like fucking 2010. So,
well, if you didn't have a big budget, you didn't necessarily could afford to have a lot of guys drawing pictures,
Yeah.
But no, so which way, if I remember correctly, like, and it was fun for me because I used to see how like excuse me, like Hollywood prosthetic animatronics and that shit worked, where it's like if somebody has to be like a gorilla for like a Tarzan movie or George of the Jungle or Congo or something like that, like they'll be in a gorilla suit, but they'll have like the mechanical gloves that transfer into the fingers of the suit and that stuff. And they show that in the Starship Troopers anime where they're like getting suited up and doing that stuff. So it's like, yeah, proportionally, these don't look like real humans, but that's because everything's being operated from a human-sized internal suit with that stuff. So it was pretty cool, like on a design level.
I think Starship Troopers might have kind of given birth to the idea of power armor too.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know of an earlier example of it in science fiction.
Well, because before that, like, people were doing either just skin tight rubber spacesuits or like dive suits in fucking space.
But there were like war robots and stuff like that, and there were different kinds of futuristic war machines mentioned, but I don't know specifically like just a giant robot suit, armored suit.
Doc Smith had space armor, but I don't remember if it was supposed to be powered or not.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I think pre-Apollo program, everybody was going with like the skin tight Flash Gordon style shit.
Well,
like,
somebody in the comments saying that Doc Smith did have power armor in some of his. He wrote a lot though, so it might be somebody. I've never read any like the 30s pulp, so it's possible. It's entirely possible. That man, a lot of things that came later in science fiction, Doc Smith actually did first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, Galactic Patrol blows Star Wars out of the water.
You know, here's the thing. I think George Lucas would actually agree with you on that. Because he just based it off all the fucking sci-fi pulps he read as a kid. So.
And that's okay. I mean, it's okay until you start trying to sue other people for doing the same thing, Games Workshop.
Yeah, which Space Marine armor is exactly... It's the fucking power armor from Starship Troopers.
Yep.
The God Emperor of Man.
Yeah.
It lifted straight from the third Dune book, it's...
Yeah.
But
Galaxy's Edge doesn't really do the power armor. It's more like a better version of Stormtrooper armor.
They did it basically like, what if that Land Warrior program shit actually worked?
No.
So.
Oh,
you know what?
Legionary Stormtroopers in Afghanistan. So
you know what? I saw the last remnant descendant of the Land Warrior program when I was in Afghanistan in 2011. One of the Army lieutenants that had it. It was like this little PDA that he wore on the front of his vest. And it had like a screen with different tactical information. He said it was like a Blue Force tracker thing built into it. And he said he hated it because basically it was just allowed the absolute micromanagement from on high of They were trying to make a thing where like some general could play command and conquer with real soldiers. That's what they wanted to do.
You see what Travis Scott said. Well, now everybody's got those on there. They're just iPhones that are hooked up to the fucking Blue Force tracker system.
The first time I actually saw one of those was 2009, and the PJs had them. We were doing some training with the PJs, and we were still using the tough books and prick 150s, and like, wow, those are small and light.
I think a lot of the ideas they had for that were probably sound ideas. It's just the technology was not. They had to miniaturize a lot of it to make it practical.
Yeah.
Battery life was an issue too.
Yeah. Battery life is always going to be an issue. That's why, as an old infantryman, I don't trust anything that runs on batteries.
Bro, after like spending an hour typing on a tough book, I'm just thinking to myself, my kingdom for a fucking pen and paper. It's like this would be so much easier on a write in a rain notebook than a fucking tough book. Oh. Yeah, how funny would that have been if Heinlein had like the fucking Write in the Rain books in Starship Troopers?
Right. I have always thought it'd be funny if you there was recently a Tom Kratman book where a character goes back in time to like the early 60s. And I think one of the things that would be funny to do if you somehow found yourself in that situation, besides making yourself rich, would be to be a science fiction writer. Because the things you could predict.
Yeah, they would never fucking believe it.
I know, they would never. You'd think this is insane, and then you'd be right.
This is fucking stupid. We're still going to be using VHS cassettes, okay?
Imagine trying to tell people about furries.
Is
they put you in a rubber room.
Yeah. But
this is a message from the future. I have seen the future, and it is cringe.
If there's anything not power armor related that I really want from Starship Troopers, the book, though, it's that your briefs are all just given to you in your sleep through like hypnosis. So like you just know all the information innately instead of you having to fucking take an hour out of your time to listen to the incredibly long-winded and fucking self-aggrandizing CEO give you the fucking brief.
So any caveats to that? I'm going to caveat that they turned caveat into a verb. Like, oh my god.
No, you know, the modern day military would still be able to make that cringe. Like, you get all your brain dump, hypnosis brief, and then another shrink comes in. He's like, just a piggyback off of what that guy said. Like, oh, damn it, just let me sleep.
That's actually the whole hypnosis thing was a recurring thing in a lot of Heinlein's books. He was a believer in that.
Yeah, it was a lot less discredited back then.
Yeah, that was kind of like new science back then, and it ended up not panning out at all, I think.
Though
it's like with the psychic.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Coop. Can you imagine not being able to get away from work even in your sleep?
I just want the briefs. That's it. I want to go to sleep, wake up, and I just know exactly what the fuck they want me to know.
I mean, it's practically like that now, from what I understand, though. Like
yes, I'm already asleep during the briefs, but
well, no, I mean all the guys in the military now have to give their cell phone number to they're in like a unit group chat with their NCOs. Can you imagine? Jesus.
So there's this thing.
And then you don't get removed from it when you leave.
So I have a story about that, but which got. So there's this thing where like girls that get hit on by guys and ask their number, they've made actual like AI chat bots to respond to them so that like you can give that number and then they'll text you and it won't be you. It'll be an AI chat bot that just fucking keeps this guy busy. Imagine taking one of those and putting that as your number on the unit group chat. You need to be in formation by 600. Oh, that time works for me, big guy. Like, what the fuck? They won't even be able to kick you out, though.
They can certainly make your life miserable, though.
I got a random text from one of those porn bots trying to do that. It was like, say potatoes if you're a real person. It was just like, of course I'm real. And I even sent that picture like of Sam Gamgee, like potatoes. It's like, oh, nice picture. And then I got a picture of some woman's tits. It's like,
only it were that easy. Fuck.
Not today, Skynet.
You bitches are just after my precious taters.
Right? My taters in my vril. Can't have any of it.
Oh. No, but okay, so I was put on the RBE fucking group chat before I finally EAS'd and all that stuff. And I told them, it's like, hey, I am gone on this day. Don't ever fucking text me again. Like I'm not showing up to your I didn't show up to your formations anyways. Like I'm definitely not showing up now. Fucking and which got I'm on terminal leave, right? It's almost Christmas, and I get a fucking text and be like, "Hey, everybody's got to form up on this shit." I was like, "You sons of bitches!" So I wait a week, and then I fucking text, be like, "Hey, everybody's got to be at the armory at 0430."
Holy shit!
Fucking LT said to pass it on, man. So, and then fucking, I wake up. I put my phone on silent, and I wake up the next day, and there's just like 300 text messages of like, who the fuck said this? It's like, why are we out here hanging out with and I just texted back to them, be like, I fucking told you to take my name off.
Everyone in the chat, this man is a legend. Round of applause.
No, it's not a blue. That wasn't a Blue Falcon move. I told them ahead of time, remove my name.
That is,
or you're not going to have fun.
Got a DD-214 and ain't Blue Falconry anymore.
No,
you're harassing a private citizen at that point.
That is response to Blue Falconry. That's what that is.
Yeah. And then fucking that brings me to another point is you know how the like people are talking about like, hey, they're testing the Second Amendment because they're going to test the First Amendment and then they're going to test every amendment after that.
The Third Amendment, yes.
I thought to myself, it's like the only amendment I'm looking forward to being tested and like trampled is the Third Amendment. Because I'm absolutely going to make a bunch of fucking National Guardsmen police call my yard and like assign them duty and fucking implement field day inspections and shit.
And you might think somebody out there might
think field day inspection.
They won't listen to you because you're like. Here's the thing: if they're like young privates, you just got to yell loud enough and say it authoritatively. They'll absolutely listen.
Well, here's the thing: they might not listen to me because I'm a civilian. I'm still the fucking homeowner. Like,
yeah, they'll listen.
Yeah. And because I'm a civilian, there's technically no rules in the UCMJ prohibiting me from putting this corporal in a fucking mattress, fucking bungee cording it, and then throwing him out of my fucking second floor window. You can't charge me for hazing.
Again, as I've said before, that is very specific.
No, it happened all the time.
Random thing you made up.
No, that was common all throughout Camp Lejeune. Probably Pendleton as well. Pete left so that he has plausible deniability, but I'm sure he can.
See, this is how you can tell that Heinlein had been like a Navy officer and not been in the Marines, because there were no horrible shenanigans.
Oh, fucking dude! What pranks could you do with a Marauder suit?
Oh, dear God!
Oh man,
the amount of dicks drawn on the fucking armor panels.
What kind of tactical acquisitions could you pull off with the Marauder suit?
Hey guys, I got a couple extra nukes. Fucking. Because the nukes were just like as common as a fucking rocket launcher or grenade over there.
If you were the assistant section leader, you were trusted enough to be given like the small 2 kiloton nuclear rockets.
Oh yeah, dude, bro, fucking one squad of that shit, that was mutually assured destruction. Like fucking your squad was the Cold War. Fucking
think of how much equipment you could strategically transfer to an alternate location.
Yeah.
With a Marauder suit.
You know, I think
not to mention the occasional bank heist.
Having Greedos, we're turning it into the armory.
Especially if you've taken it into combat. You've been living in it for a week.
No, I would pray that instead of it being like treated as individual gear, it's treated like the helo is for a fucking air wing unit, where it's just like the pilot comes back and be like, oh, that was a dusty mission. Maintenance crew, get on this. Fucking, and just goes over and plays fucking volleyball and drinks coffee.
Maybe it's like when we were leaving Afghanistan, we gave our weapons to some contractor, and he put them in he had one of those sonic dunk tank things, and they came out of that thing completely stripped of all lubrication and dust and everything else. They're ready to go.
And bluing. Yeah. No, we had one of those. The problem is we had one of them. So when the entire fucking company comes back from a field op, there is a line there.
Oh yeah, I was saying we didn't have that. This was some civilian contractor on Kandahar Airfield. But I bet they have something like that on the ship for the Marauder suits.
Yeah.
But I actually, honestly, I think, from a world building perspective, I think maybe the Terran Federation military is kind of impractical. The way it's presented.
They have all the women driving.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have this tiny little infantry force that has this absurdly difficult training. Like at one point, they drop Rico off in the woods with naked.
Whoa.
Rabbits.
Whoa, Mike. Are you saying it's impractical to have a highly trained but small and selective group of special operators doing the jobs of a conventional military instead of sending in the conventional ground troops?
I mean,
who would do that for the past 10 years?
I mean, this was written pre-GWAT and actually before Special Forces, as we know it, was even a thing. So there were some lessons that had not been learned. And granted, fighting terrorists isn't exactly like fighting aliens with laser guns, but.
So Pablo John just said Starship Troopers, a.k.a. JSOC returns. No, Starship Troopers would be JSOC with E3 pay.
Yeah.
So you have that to look forward to.
And I think, in a lot of comparative military science fiction where they have your similar power armor, a lot of it is kind of watered down, like nerfed in capability compared to the OG Marauder suit and Starship Troopers. Because the thing was, it was basically like the Hero Gundam in Mobile Suit Gundam and what each one of those things could do. And you really had to, from just a dramatic standpoint, you really had to stack the odds against the characters for it to be a real threat against.
Yeah, like that was the point in Starship Troopers, though, is they made war so lopsided in their favor that it took a threat like the bugs to really fucking push them to the brink.
Yeah. So. And they were actually kind of caught off guard by the bugs too.
Yeah, they were losing pretty much every fucking battle up until like the midpoint. So. JSOC, but no dive, demo, jump, or hazardous duty pay because fuck you. That's why. Yeah.
But throughout the book,
here's your nuke. You don't get any demo pay though.
Throughout the book, there are a lot of discussions of the history and philosophy and all that. There's even a class that the high schoolers have to take, and that's kind of like where the teacher of that class, Mr. Dubois, is kind of like an author XP in the story. And his lectures come up quite a bit here and there throughout the story, giving the philosophy of the book. And he goes on a rant about Karl Marx a few times. It's glorious, but it's definitely narrative fiction. It is lecturing you on how bad communism is.
I do like how he fucking picks apart piece by piece the argument that like the sum of labor is like. He
even uses He picks apart the labor theory of value by using the mud pie analogy that Thomas Sowell used. Yeah. I'm not sure who used it first, to be honest.
I am willing to bet that Thomas Sowell has read Starship Troopers, though.
I bet.
Well, as Penguin pointed out, there were other military units besides the MI. We just see the MI because that's where Rico is.
But MI was basically the entirety of their ground combat forces, though. There wasn't any like armor, or there wasn't any.
Right, but that's because they kind of are the armor.
Yes, they are.
How many more nukes can you fit on the tank instead of the fucking mobile?
Yeah, the way he set it up, the way he set it up is they're pretty much all that's necessary. Now you can argue that that's not realistic, but at least it is addressed in the book for why it is that way. It's not just pulling it out.
They're as mobile as a tank. They're packing their own artillery. They're more mobile than a tank. They're packing their own artillery. And they're armored against quite a lot. So
yeah, it's like if you took a fucking tank and an AC-130 and a missile silo and made it as maneuverable as an infantryman. So,
and they do have canine units. They have mutated dogs that are about as intelligent as a human moron. That's the actual description in the book. That you get so attached to that if the handler is killed, they put the dog down because it's too traumatic for the dog. And if the dog is killed, the handler is sedated and has to go into therapy because it really messes them up.
I mean, they also have possible psychics.
And the dog can talk.
Yeah.
They talk like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just
talk with Scooby-Doo speech impediments because they don't have proper human lips, which I thought is...
Raggy, looks like that's a brain bug.
Okay, if you were making this into a proper TV show, you would have to leave that out because there's no way you could make that seriously.
What if instead of making it like Scooby-Doo, you made it like the Luck Dragon from Neverending Story? A train. The skinnies.
That's why I think that's why Nick and Jason made them telepathic instead in Galaxy's Edge.
Well, at least the Humvees couldn't talk, because then you'd have like Speed Buggy. I think that's an ID.
Oh God.
We gotta do this. We gotta find a way. I have to take advantage of all the AI fuckery to make parodies of like military themed Hanna-Barbera cartoons now.
You know what? That Scooby-Doo show they did in like the early 2000s. If I remember right, there was an episode they did where they brought together all the classic Hanna-Barbera talking thing mascots.
Yeah,
like the Speed Buggy and Scooby-Doo, and there was like a ghost in
the funky Phantom. Yep.
Yeah, and they put them all together, and then they realized they're dismayed that they were all the sidekicks. It's the comic.
That's when Jabberjaw was like, "Yeah, there's no respect."
They're all variations on
comedians.
Why am I blanking on his name now?
Rodney Dangerfield?
Rodney Dangerfield, yeah.
I think a lot of Hanna-Barbera's cartoon characters are just different celebrities turned into Fred Flintstone.
Whoa. You mean to tell me that the Hanna-Barbera cartoon template wasn't that original?
What?
The Flintstones was just the Honeymooners.
Yeah.
The Honeymooners didn't have dinosaurs, so checkmate.
No, but they had domestic abuse.
That was just Ralph Cramden being a visionary about going to the moon.
That guy wasn't an astronaut, and going to the moon is just an analogy for beating his wife. Futurama used to be so.
Somebody in the comments, Chris just said that the Neo dogs are also called Caleb's, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure. I read that today, and I could not figure out why the hell they're called Caleb's. It's a name from the Bible. I don't know of any connection to dogs.
Unless he was mutating the Edgar Rice Burroughs Martian dog, the Callet.
Possible.
Yeah.
But all in all, for a sci-fi novel, like Starship Troopers is pretty light on the lore and the world building because, as Coop said, it's not what it's about. It's about the philosophy. And it's about it presents you. It makes you think about some things that you really don't have to think about that much in our modern society, but were probably more relevant questions to somebody who had survived World War II and was in the middle of the height of the Cold War. Like those are people who lived who had faced an existential threat, and for people like that, it was more of it felt more real, you know. In 1959, 1960, there weren't a lot of safeguards for the missiles going back and forth at that point. So, yeah.
And that's something that gets pointed out, particularly in that Arch video with the guy just smugly referring to any sort of militarism as inherently fascist, because that's apparently the extent of this dude's definition of fascism, is that it's
because we all know
communism. We have entire generations who have grown up without the very concept of hey, there is somebody who wants you dead. And you may not get to do whatever you want because there's somebody who wants you dead.
Yeah, that was less removed for people who had been through World War II. Hell, both world wars for that generation, and then I mean,
Yeah, but
imagine
this
if
generation has been through January 6th. That's basically the same thing.
I know, right? But imagine if you were born in the early 20th century and you saw the First World War, the Second World War, the Holocaust, the atomic bomb, and then the invention of the ICBM. And when you were little, they still had horse and buggies. And now there were intercontinental ballistic nuclear missiles that could destroy the world. Like, that's a lot for a person to take in one lifetime. You know, that's more change than the previous 500 years. And it all happened in your lifetime. And that's stuff that could just destroy all of civilization. So, yeah, and it's worth thinking about. Like, what are you willing to do to protect your, like, not just like yourself and your way of life, but your existence, the human race,
or your pronouns,
or your pronouns. Like, if you get eaten by bugs, you don't have pronouns anymore. They don't care if you're transgender.
I will say this. I do like that line from the movie, though, is someday someone like me is going to come back here and kill you and your whole fucking race. There's some badass last words for, like, the fucking shitty jock boyfriend from a fucking 90s sitcom.
You know, another change that they made from the book to the movie is that they made Dizzy female, and B, they made Dizzy a major character.
Yep.
Dizzy dies in the opening scene in the book and is barely mentioned again. It's not.
And
yeah,
Dizzy
but that's as far as Paul Verhoeven got in the book. So
yeah.
What were you saying, Pete?
And Dizzy in the book was a dude.
Yeah, that's
yeah. And Ace wasn't retarded
because the MI in the book was all male.
Yeah, like I said, they had the women driving. Fucking, they were all in the Space Navy.
All the pilots were women, and all of the grunts were dudes.
Yeah, and I think somebody brought up was like, why do the physical differences matter if you have the powered armor? It was like, well, first off, you're still training up until you get into the power armor, and the other thing is like, Robert Heinlein probably had this idea of like women's like reaction times are better in certain circumstances in orbit or some shit, so they're preferred for that. You see that in all sorts of like Heinlein books. Is just like some minor fucking biological quirk turns into like a caste system or some shit.
And then also,
but
Heinlein was a generation where they just. I don't think Heinlein ever really thought about, well, we should just put women in the infantry and send. That wasn't like an idea that people took seriously back then. It just wasn't. So
yeah, it's also it's like, why do you want all your breeding population down on the fucking planet getting eaten by bugs?
Right? Like, why would you do that? We have plenty of men, right? Like, what is the logical argument for it?
I mean, not only that, but there are other disciplinary and morale problems that come along with co-ed units that.
Like even in the book, it's mentioned that they're on a separate part of the ship, and they have like the grunts will fight for the opportunity to guard like the hatch, just so they might hear a woman's voice because they're that hard up at that point.
Sounds like you could add something else to the hypnotism brief,
like the saltpeter.
Really good briefing. Fucking can't wait to do it again.
Now, yeah, that's another like recurring theme in a lot of Heinlein's books is that, gosh, I like girls. Like we get it, Robert. You're a horny guy.
As long as they're redheads.
He does. I mean, a lot of times he paints it. He describes it from the viewpoint of characters. It makes it sound really like kind of innocent and adorable, like very like Happy Days type romance thing, But
yeah, until you realize that they're related, and Heinlein's going full force on that shit.
But behind that was a horny old man. Yes. Yeah.
like let's not get it wrong. A horny old hippie. Like he was. This is also the same guy that wrote Stranger in a Strange Land. Like,
yeah. So for anybody out there accusing Robert Heinlein of being a fascist, of being a fucking Nazi. The same guy wrote Stranger in a Strange Land, where Valentine Michael Smith, born on Mars, raised by weird Martians, comes to Earth, becomes like hippie free love space Jesus.
I think you mean hippie free love space RoboCop.
You know, and that wasn't the only book. He had another book of his. I read another book of his. I read 20 years ago. Friday, right? Interesting book, good book. But the main character ends up in like a free sex polycule raising kids.
Yep.
You know, it's just.
But not chicken.
Now, granted, the character was like an artificially engineered person, so you can argue that people like that they might not have the same value because they weren't raised in a family. And Heinlein wasn't afraid to explore that stuff. It was more novel back in the 60s and 70s and 80s than it is now when it's been done to death. You know, it was more interesting back then. Now it's just a dumb cliche.
Yeah, he was all over the place, but Starship Troopers was good for what it was. And if you want less philosophy and more fucking action, go read Armor. It's a great book. Have either of you two read Armor?
I have not yet.
Okay, so I'm not going to get into certain spoilers, but the concept is there's this guy that's trying to commit suicide by war for reasons that are spoilerish. So anyways, he wants to fucking die and he wants to do it honorably. So he signs up for the military in a fucking existential war with bug-like enemies and all that shit. But he has his natural instinct that refuses to die. And he becomes really good at fighting just because there's just he calls it the engine, right? There's just this fugue state that fucking takes over and just gets him out of any situation. And because he's so good at fighting, they keep throwing him in these situations. And this entire time, he is terrified to fucking death, and he just wants it to end, and it won't. And so he goes through all the horrors of war over and over again, getting put into more and more harrowing situations. And he's in the scout armor. He's not even in the assault armor. So, and all of this is told by the framing narration of this is the suit's memory log that has been accessed by like these space pirate treasure hunters that came across his suit. And so they're fucking reliving his emotional trauma through the suit's logs. So armor is not only in reference to the armored suits, but like the emotional armor that you have to put on in order to make it through armed conflict. And because that's the framing device and that's the story, there is a shitload of combat. So, yeah.
Oh, Robert Heinlein, no.
It's
unfortunately some of the parallels are
you know, here's the thing though, John Ringo's probably like, yep, and I would have fucking been a huge fan.
Probably.
That caught me off guard. Yep.
I mean, you did see some of this in other Mill science fiction too. Like in one of the beginning parts, like the first Hammer Slammer stories, they talk about one of the goods they're retrieving for the unit is like this alien creature that they've grafted human tits on and turned into like a sex doll for the troops, and it gets killed in the battle. Like the power gun tears up through the cage they're transporting it in. It looks kind of like a human woman, but they put boobs on it. It's just like, you read through it and you're like, okay, wait a minute, what? And you're like, ugh.
Okay, so sci-fi authors back then could think that up, but they couldn't think up fleshlights. Maybe that just goes to show how degenerate a fleshlight is. It's like not even these fucking old pervs could have thought that up.
I actually don't know that Heinlein was ever not monogamous. I don't know if that was true or not. I just know he wrote about it a lot. I don't know if he ever was like, he was married till he died. So I don't know if he ever did that open marriage stuff or not. So personally,
maybe that was his way of like passing notes to his wife. Like, you cool with this, honey? Like, what do you think of my new book? Just
it was like, And that way, if he didn't get a positive response, it was like, oh, this is just in the book.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not like,
No, this is just what Lazarus Long wants, not me.
yeah, that's not anything I would be into.
Yeah.
There you go. Apparently, Heinlein can't be a fascist because he has a sex drive.
Yeah. So I actually grew up on the Heinlein juveniles, like
Tunnel in the Sky, stuff like that.
Have Spacesuit Will Travel, Rocket Ship Galileo,
Mood
those.
is the Harsh Mistress.
I don't know if that was one of his juveniles, though.
That was more one of his political philosophy ones.
Yeah, but it was very juvenile philosophy.
So yeah, when I and then Starship Troopers, and then I picked up Stranger in a Strange Land. I don't think I ever finished it, actually.
I admit I did not. I lost interest in Stranger in a Strange Land because it was too.
I couldn't grok it.
Yeah, I couldn't grok it either. It just was not.
Yeah.
It was not grok. It was not grokking for me.
I'm too much of a fascist.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, and I got through the Lazarus Long books. But Stranger in a Strange Land was just a bit too much. It's interesting. His early books, the ones they were all in he did the whole universe thing before it was a thing. Revolt in 2100. And
he wasn't the only. There were a lot of writers working in those in that time who were building these vast future
That's
histories.
true. That's true. I know.
Paul Anderson did it. James Blish did it.
Even Edgar Rice Burroughs even said that you can't prove that fucking Princess of Mars and Tarzan aren't in the same universe.
No.
And Asimov did it with his robots, and the Empire books were all
It was kind of the thing. It was kind of the thing to do was to write the history of the future.
It's just interesting how that all kind of came full circle now, with every single author making a verse now for their.
Yeah. Personally, I prefer future history to verse.
Yeah, I feel
we can thank Joss Whedon for that bit of cringe.
I know that's
you can thank him for a lot of cringe in modern media right now. So.
Joss Whedon, in the very unlikely event you are watching or ever see this, please punch yourself in the dick. Thank you.
Repeatedly. With a knuckle duster.
He doesn't own one of those. He lives in California. I meant the dick, not the knuckle dusters. I'm sure you can get those.
But yeah, Heinlein, there was actually a big anti-authoritarian streak in most of Heinlein's works against not just the state, but also religion. Some of it was kind of cringe. Some of it was he was doing the whole, one of the setups for Revolt in 2100 was that basically the Christian nationalists took over the U.S. He did that before it was even a thing.
They read the Turner Diaries.
And there was a revolt against them that overthrew them, and there was the New Covenant, and then the future history really got going. They went back to space. It all started with, it was a story called If This Goes On, I think, where the church man got elected president, the crazy preacher guy.
I
haven't read it, so I wouldn't know.
I did. I read Methuselah's Children, but I never really got into a lot of Heinlein's future history. But I've much more enjoyed, again, Paul Anderson, Larry Niven, somewhat.
K. Dick a lot more too.
What's that?
Yeah. If This Goes On. Yeah. Okay. If This Goes On was written in 1940. There's a novella in astounding science fiction. It's a future theocratic American society. The first prophet was Nehemiah Scudder, a backwoods preacher turned president elected in 2012. And no elections were held in it for 2016 or later.
Interesting date.
He's overthrown by a cabal that's actually involved with actually tied to the Freemasons.
So yeah, he was onto something then, because
No, they overthrew the theocratic dictator.
Either way, they're influencing elections somehow. That's right. I said it. Yeah.
But can I do this? Oh, I can't. Yeah, Whedon's best work was not continuing Firefly. Absolutely, it would have.
Serenity was good. It was a perfect way to end that series.
He would have made one of the characters decide they were gay all of a sudden. It would have gone full Buffy. You guys know it in your hearts.
No.
My name's not River, it's Willow.
The fact that Firefly was as good as it was already a fluke.
Yep.
Especially since I remember I saw an interview with him, and he said he got the idea for reading about like the Confederates after the Civil War.
The Killer Angels. He read
what
that.
It was like to be on the side that lost, and in the last decade or so, the Confederate. Ooh, wait, nope.
Malcolm Reynolds would be like, you know what? I guess the alliance was right after all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the book he read and inspired him to make that was the Killer Angels, and it is about the returning Confederate soldiers after the war.
Killer Angels is actually about Gettysburg, as I recall. That's what the movie Gettysburg was based on.
But yeah, the only one I want to see returning to Firefly is Adam Baldwin.
I'd rather see Adam Baldwin do something else that's better.
I can see Adam Baldwin return to Twitter. He's been like permanently banned.
No, but can you imagine that if they made a spin-off sequel where it's just Jane? Like it's not.
It's just Jane, the Adventures of Jane.
It's just Jane being himself.
Yep. Adam Baldwin.
There were some good lines out of that series, and mostly Jane, such as, what the chain of command is? It's the chain I go get and beat you with until you understand I'm in command here.
And I use that multiple times in my military career. Oh man.
Well, I think a lot of people just like that character. The guy who is just kind of like a borderline sociopath, but it's just likable. If you make that character likable, it can really work. They did it in The Expanse too with
Amos.
Amos, yes. Amos is the best character in The Expanse. It helps that most of the other characters were so muted that they were kind of dull. But
the other characters were just insufferably blah.
They were very blah. I mean, it was the acting style for most of the performances in there was understated, to put it nicely. It was kind of right, but yeah, Amos kind of made the show, especially because he had an actual character arc too. He went from just being like somebody's pit bull on a leash to finding out his own humanity, but still being the same likable nut job,
I don't think I actually got to that point in the series, but I have seen the scene where he turns the dude back from killing this guy. He's like, "You're not that guy." Gets him on the other side of the door, turns around. I am that guy.
Yeah.
There's a scene later in one of the later seasons where it's like some contractor for some corporation they're working with, and he's banging her, and at some point they end up on the opposite side of something. They get into a battle, like he shoots her and wounds her, and he's like, "So are we still gonna fuck?" Or it's just
I mean, it is that type of character because like Reacher is pretty popular. Like people like that autistically violent dude that just they have like their own particular set of morals and they stick to that and that's it.
Well, better to be autistically violent than violently autistic.
No, that's what all of the other Joss Whedon characters are.
We have enough of that on the internet. Thank you.
Yeah. Twitter, the movie. Oh, man. But now, yeah.
Apparently, it's funny, like all the militant defenders of the Starship Troopers movie never say anything about the sequels. Because there were at least 2 sequels.
There were 2 sequels. There was an unofficial live action sequel. And there was, I believe, 2 like CGI Japanese made
I
sequence.
know there was
And
one called like Starship Troopers, Traitor of Mars, that was CGI.
Yeah, well,
And,
there's Invasion, which it's like fucking Final Fantasy, but with Starship Troopers, but they have the suits. They're not as cool as the 1988 anime one, but yeah, it's like watching one of those CGI Resident Evil movies. It's on that caliber in literally everything, quality, fucking animation style, all that shit.
It's garbage.
It's not good.
It's yeah, like I said, weird. They don't have any. But it's interesting though that the movies, as bad as they were, spawned like this small like cult following. There's like model makers and people who paint miniatures and who do cosplay and all that.
The
And
video games are apparently good too. Like they had a 90s PC, or it would have been early 2000s PC shooter based on the movie.
I remember reading in PC Gamer way back when they were still developing that. They were talking about making a game or would have had the power armor, and I saw an early screenshot of that, but I don't think that game ever got made.
I mean, they made it, but you didn't have the power armor. But that's okay. They made what's it called? StarCraft. So you have
Edge of Tomorrow did not have Starship Trooper. I mean, they had power armor kind of, but in the middle of the power armor was just a guy in a plate carrier in a helmet. Like he wasn't really in the armor. It was just kind of like a power exosuit.
Yeah,
it's like he was just an exoskeleton to be able to handle the weight of the
ammunition.
And also, the whole point of that movie is like a looping time thing. Every time he dies,
it's Groundhog Day with aliens.
And that the premise of that makes almost no sense if you think about it. It's fun if you don't think about it.
Here's why it doesn't make sense. So it's based off of a Japanese light novel.
Say no more.
Yeah. And it diverges from it somewhat significantly, which creates a plot hole. But at the same time, it did that in order to avoid a plot hole in the original fucking book. So,
yeah, I actually don't know of any. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any movies or TV shows that portrayed like military sci-fi powered armor really well. Honestly, I mean, for live action, it's understandable because it'd be difficult and expensive. You'd have to have a huge budget to do that well. Before now with cheap CGI, maybe I don't know, but
I was about to say spectral, but like it's complete schlock, and that's why I like it. But it's technically not power armor. So,
I mean, Astartes if you can find it.
Yeah, I mean, Astartes does it well, and you can find it. Just hit me up in the comments. I'll fucking.
It's one of those things. Those ideas, and it's been in literary science fiction. It just really hasn't made the translation to, at least not to television or to the movies. It's been in video games plenty and in tabletop games and things like that. But for whatever reason, it just
shit. They can do it good in a video game, and as soon as they do an adaptation of that video game, and they fuck it up. There's just something about like TV in Hollywood where they cannot do it.
I think part of it. I mean, there have been games where they had good, like the heavy gear games had like serious power armor where you're like a walking tank, basically, you know. And
yeah, I mean, like, so technically it's a mech. It's not a powered armor because you're like sitting in a cockpit that just happens to be the entire torso of the thing. It's not like they're as big as BattleTech stuff, but I still wouldn't call them powered armor.
That's kind of what I mean. It's kind of like in the gray. I mean, the Marauder power.
Oh, fucking A. Exo Squad. It was like an 80s or 90s cartoon.
I had one of the toys of that when I was a kid. It was a guy who would climb into this little suit and little wings would fold up because I could fly. It was like a flying suit.
Was this Exo Squad or Centurions?
This was Exo Squad.
Okay. Because Centurions is another one. Now,
Centurions was earlier. That was in the 80s, right?
It is the 80s-est of 80s fucking cartoons, but it was basically take your pick between like Steve McQueen, Burt Reynolds, and fucking Paul Newman. Give them different like water warfare, or like surface warfare, fucking aerial warfare, and ground warfare fucking suits. and then just fucking beam them from a satellite down to fucking fuck up cyborgs. It was awesome. One of the guys has a pet wolf. I have no idea why, but they do.
Because he's a badass. That's
Yeah,
why.
basically. But yeah, so Exo Squad did it well.
Most of the time, I think when you see actual powered armor, even in games, it's usually going to be something like StarCraft. I mean, there's Space Marine, but I mean, Halo
like,
is
Halo is
supposed to
technically power armor, but like
but it's not like
power.
I think the reason you don't see it as envisioned in a lot of sci-fi, like mill sci-fi books, is because it's the way they do it in the book is really powerful, and it ended up being more like a flight simulator type game where you're blowing up terrain and moving many miles instead of being like a first-person shooter.
right.
And you could do that, but they don't want to do that. It's too different.
No, they want to make Starfield instead.
Yeah.
Or they want to make another COD copy, instead of.
Oh yeah, there you go. There's your perfect power armor thing. Was Call of Duty Infinite Warfare.
That was kind of like the beginning of the end for the annual COD franchise, wasn't it? Until they rebooted it. They just,
and then they completely screwed that up.
I mean, Modern Warfare was a Call of Duty game. They stopped calling it Call of Duty after that, and then they just stopped calling it Modern Warfare. They just call it Modern Warfare again. There's another game called Modern Warfare that was another Call of Duty game. Like you guys.
Yeah.
Activision, you guys are monsters.
Yeah, what I've seen of the reboot Modern Warfare is just, it's like, wow.
I saw you play.
I thought the original Modern Warfare 2 and 3 were stupid. Apparently, you guys just managed to top it.
Well, I mean, it's Activision. There was a time when they published good games, and that time was like 2002, and then they quit. So,
you know what I think it was? I think it was because the original like Modern Warfare, like COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2, is they were ripping off of like all the movies they had seen up to that point.
yeah.
And the movies were better back then because the new ones were ripping off of like Act of Valor and some shit like that, like A-Team. Looking.
Well, there was a decided shift between COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2. COD 4 could have stood on its own as a thriller.
Right.
Modern Warfare 2 was just so blatantly Red Dawn and The Rock mashed together
with this batshit insane plot that made no sense. Right.
With absolutely zero sense being made on nobody making any logical decisions at the strategic level.
But the reason they get away
magical logistics, completely magical logistics.
The reason they get away with that is because by that time the focus had become almost entirely on the multiplayer. I have a husband.
The other bitch I have with Modern Warfare 2 is it was the introduction of the Michael Bay school of shooters where we're going to throw so much shit in the player's face that they can't see. And that's going to make it more realistic.
I'll do you one better. It also introduced like all the fucking tacky ass skins that you can throw on your guns and shit like that to make it look like you're fucking.
Another trope I've seen in games recently, I don't know if like Rainbow Six Siege really got this going, but it's a little charm hanging off of the gun. Like nobody in the real world does that, but a lot of gamer guns.
No, but Japanese people used to do that off of their cell phones. So.
You absolutely would not do, especially on a handgun. It would just get in the way on everything. You would.
That's why they haven't won a war in a while. But
yeah, Bob, and that's not saying very much.
I know a husband of one of my wife's friends actually works in the game industry, and for a while, at least on the Call of Duty games, they had completely separate teams working on the single player and the multiplayer. The single player was just kind of an afterthought, right? It was just some tacked on shit they did for all. I mean, look at what they did with Warzone, right? They just went to a battle royale game and they just give it to you for free because they make all their money off of microtransactions. That's the future Activision wants.
Apparently, in the new Modern Warfare 3, entire missions are just Warzone levels recycled.
Oh, you cheap
Look,
bastards.
I'm just saying, your terrorist organization cannot actually be that big of a threat if they just leave all their extra ammo and spare guns just lying around unsecured in your fucking dockyard or wherever the fuck.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, crates of shotgun ammo, just what I needed.
Just in time.
Yeah, I didn't even need to gear up for this mission.
Yeah, like back in the day, there was a golden age of shooter games between like from the late '90s into about 2006 or 7 when the first Modern Warfare game came out, where there were still good games and you were getting into them having good graphics and they're still trying new things and they hadn't quite solidified in all the tropes we have now.
Well, they also hadn't totally consolidated into like everything's owned by the same like 3 or 4 parent companies now.
Yes. Yeah, you had games like Monolith and Raven Software were still putting out games. They hadn't been bought up by, thrown into the Call of Duty mines. Never to be seen
that's the
again.
other thing. Maybe the reason all the Modern Warfare games suck nowadays is because all the talent on there left to go make Titanfall.
Possibly. Yes. We have gotten a little bit off topic, but that's what we do. We do not
I don't know. We're still going on shit that was inspired by Starship Troopers because it's impossible not to. Everything you know and love has been inspired by Starship Troopers.
That's true.
Even Pride and Prejudice, if you're into that shit. Believe me, Jane Austen, huge Heinlein fan.
I mean, you might think that sounds crazy, but Lazarus Long went back in time and banged his mom. So
yeah,
think about it.
And that's why Darcy's a piece of shit. It's just
there was a comment to that about just that earlier in the chat.
Yep. Yeah, Heinlein was into weird shit, and I refuse to let him go for it. Like I will not let him off the hook on that stuff. But I will defend Starship Troopers because A, it's a good book, and B, it's not fascist, and that's the only thing that people fucking bring up about it.
Yeah, I mean, if your only definition of fascism is like enforcing laws and not against criminal conduct and like having a military, then yeah, that's super fascist, guys. Now,
well, that's the thing.
If that's your definition of fascism, I have some bad news for you.
Yeah.
Also, one of the things that they cling to in their arguments that it's fascist, and it's not just like randos on the internet doing this. There was like a string of academics and literary critics who have tried to make this argument over the years too.
Oh, so even dumber people than the Twitter users.
Yes, dumber and worse in every way.
Yeah.
But there's mentions that there's like corporal punishment for certain things, like like Singapore then, like.
Yeah.
What if we instead of calling it corporal punishment, you just call it a struggle session? It's better. That's the thing. Is communism just means or fascism just means not communism?
Yeah,
anything that they're claiming is fascism, either communism does it too, or it's just living in a society, which I am told we do. So
you're being lectured on what is unacceptable and fascist and authoritarian by people who think Joseph Stalin has been given an unfair treatment by history and think the Holodomor never happened.
Yeah,
people who apologize for the fucking Khmer Rouge, right?
That's the best part. Is they think the Holodomor didn't happen, but they also have the Ukraine flag in their bios.
Yeah.
Like, good luck talking to a Ukrainian and fucking denying that shit.
Yeah.
But we got into that argument when you posted your initial fucking tweet review of Starship Troopers. Was somebody was like, no, the aesthetics are what make it fascism. Aesthetics are part of fascism. It's like, come on, man.
Sounds like something a terminally online dork who.
No, that sounds like something a terminally online fascist would say. Fascism is great because their uniforms are spiffy.
Like, do you have a Greek statue profile picture there, or because I mean, yes, the Nazis worried a lot about aesthetics because, I mean, they were trying to show their previously shithole country that things are new and better now. So they wanted everything to look nice. They were putting a Band-Aid on a country that had been collapsing.
Yeah, and the communists did it too. It's just they sucked at it because they chose brutalism instead of fucking neoclassicalism. So.
Yes, but they absolutely tried to do it.
So if you're going to argue that the difference between communism and fascism is taste, I have some bad news for you because that's going to push more people towards fascism.
Like
it's this blinkered sort of echo chamber where there is no other option. It's communism or fascism. That's all there is.
Because that's what it was in Europe for the longest time.
And you see people on the other side leaning into this now too. They want to yes, but we want to be the fascists. Like, no, you're both terrible and stupid.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why fascism keeps being called right wing. When if you look at it policy for policy, it's nothing like right wing because we're talking about American right. They're talking about European right.
Yeah, it's
so Europe you only had two options or three options. Communism, fascism, or Switzerland. That was it.
Well, there's also monarchism, which is in there too. But
but
all the sensible Europeans came over here to get away from that shit.
And then we shipped them back over there to fight, and they were cool with it.
And again, some of this, I keep going back to this point over and over and over again, but it keeps coming up, is that was also a huge communist propaganda point after 1945. Actually, after 1941, really.
Was you're either a fascism or you're one of us?
Yeah. And they pushed it hard during the Cold War.
Because they did push it starting when the Germans invaded because they desperately needed foreign aid to survive. Even Stalin himself said they would not have made it without American aid.
Well, we offered to fucking join them on the Eastern Front, but we said we'd have to stop the Lend-Lease program for them, and they said, fuck no, don't do that. Stay on the Western Front.
And I'm going to be the guy who says that we probably shouldn't have done Lend-Lease to the Russians and just let them and the Germans tear each other to pieces.
What?
And
it's not like the Soviets would ever ally themselves with the Germans. Yeah. So it's funny how Roosevelt was such a huge fan of the Nazis when they were allied with the Soviets. So,
Roosevelt was a piece of work.
Nazis were actually quite popular. I mean, there were buildings in New York that had statues of Mussolini in them. It was.
It was just the Italian neighborhoods. I mean,
Charles Lindbergh thought Hitler was a great dude.
Yeah, a lot of guys were all about that shit.
And plus, all the Roosevelt. There were some parallels between all the Roosevelt men who wanted a technocracy type thing, and they saw some of those dudes they saw as an idealized system in fascism. Where the smart men are running a logical scientific society. That's how they saw it.
It was very both fascism, Nazism, and communism very much came out of all of the new ideas of the 19th century,
the mysticism and the fucking eugenics, basically,
and the managerial planned society being run by the right people.
Right, but a lot of that stemmed from once evolution. People jumped onto the evolution train without really understanding the limits of evolution and how it actually worked.
Oh yeah, they were grossly.
Well, they're still doing it today.
They were grossly misapplying how natural selection works to try to apply it to human society. That's survival of the fittest. It's actually survival of the best suited to the environment. That might just be a worm. It doesn't mean you're the best.
So all the people who are watching here, I cannot emphasize enough to you how absolutely popular esoteric mysticism and spiritualism were in the second half of the 19th century and first half of the 20th century. Your fucking political leaders were getting their astrology charts fucking read so they knew how they were going to fucking rule the world and shit like that. Like this was big. Everybody was doing this, except for like the old school conservative Christian holdovers that were being lambasted at that point. So a lot of this stuff really did influence how communism and fascism came about.
Especially, I want to say, on the fascist side, like Hitler and the Nazi leadership in particular, they love themselves some mystical quality.
They leaned into it hard.
So here's where like a little bit of a divergence comes. Is the communists said, hey, all of this is valid, therefore nothing is valid, and fucking we'll fill the vacuum. Whereas the fascists said, hey, this is valid, we're gonna fucking use this and fucking, steal the lost ark and shit like that. So, that was one element of divergence. The other element, and I cracked about this earlier, but like basically the only difference between communism and fascism is, do you want a family or not? And so that's kind of why fascism or neo-fascism or whatever the fuck you want to call it is making its resurgence on Twitter right now, is because you just have a lot of disaffected loners who think that if we implement fascism, then we get all the same economic trends that we're getting now towards communism, but they get to have their fucking traditional housewife and shit like that.
They get assigned a trad wife, and that'll
apparently
those guys. Most of those guys
standard issue anime girl, shit like
those
that.
Most of those guys are virgins, so I'm gonna say they've never been in an unhappy relationship, and they have no idea what a living hell that would actually be.
No, they do. They know their mom.
Well, the other thing is again, getting back to the fascism is anything that isn't communism. I think this was a year or two ago. Somebody was arguing with Larry on Facebook about how.
Didn't we have a stream about that?
I think we might have, about how Nazism was not in any way socialistic. And
oh yeah, that was a big one. That was during
that would have been news to the National Socialist Workers Party members. Yes,
Workers Party.
I was throwing up photos of pages from William Shirer's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich about the state control of these companies in the German economy.
Yeah. Oh, you should read some of Mussolini's books. He lays it out just like for all to see. If he's like,
the only real
socialism with teeth.
Fascism, Nazism is. It's not just you get a family, but you can keep your country.
Yeah. That's the other thing is communism.
National socialism.
Yeah, communism is international socialism. Fascism is national socialism.
And honestly, the internationalism of communism was just that was claptrap anyway. And that was what that meant was Russia dominated the entire Soviet bloc.
Yeah, it was almost like what's it called? Oh, this imperialist colonialism, but for communists.
Yeah. What's that about?
And that's
communists always projecting.
The internationalism of communism fell apart as soon as Stalin and Mao stopped getting along.
Yeah. And again,
in the early 50s.
What we see so much of today is more parroting of all the evils of American imperialism.
Well, one of my favorite parts is saying it's like, man, we backed the wrong side in World War II. We should have fucking allied with Germany. It's like, yeah, man, I hate to break this to you, but Germany declared war on us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we
the complete lack of historical literacy surrounding the Second World War by these online midwits is actually midwits is giving them too much credit.
You can argue that FDR wanted to get involved in the war in Europe because he was, for whatever reason he did, right?
Well, because the pact between Russia and Germany broke, and
but
so
he didn't have the meat. He didn't have.
Well,
he had to fight tooth and nail just to get Lend-Lease to the British passed. That was actually a big political debate when that began. That wasn't just something. He didn't just do that himself. That was a big fight in Congress over that.
As much as I hate giving FDR credit for anything, I would say that it predated Barbarossa, because Barbarossa happened not very long before Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And we were already shipping material. It was pretty much once the war kicked off, there was even somebody like FDR had to admit to a certain degree of the reality of what was going on at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, but he also had to deal with the realities of the American electorate, which at the time was still pretty isolationist. Americans have never generally liked getting involved in foreign wars, and the second half of the 20th century was kind of like that was a fluke more than the historical norm. And what you're seeing now with the populist isolationism is kind of a more of a return to the historical norm. Now, how well that works in a world with instant telecommunications and ICBMs and
it didn't work in a world. It didn't work in a world with telegraph cables and
well, it also didn't work.
Fired navies either.
Yeah, it didn't work when we were not the world's only superpower. You really think it's going to work when we are the world's only superpower?
Other people might argue that, well, all the nations of the world combined couldn't invade and conquer the United States. Like, no, but imagine a world where we were cut off, isolated, and the Germans got the bomb first. I mean,
if you're looking at things from a Germany invading Poland standpoint, or some of the more bonkers World War III scenarios where the Russians invade the continental U.S. or the Chinese invade the continental U.S. or the North Koreans invade the continental U.S.
They got the EMP, okay? Like what?
No, the logistics don't work as far as that form of invasion goes. But there's still it's just like, oh well. The jihadis can't actually destroy our entire country, so therefore they're not really a threat. Bullshit.
Yeah, tell that to everyone who died on 9/11, right? Or
so
the Germans could not have invaded, conquered, and held the United States. Like, we didn't invade Japan before they surrendered.
Nope.
We dropped the sun on them twice. You know,
and you can still do an awful lot of damage. And the fact of the matter is, and we're already starting to see some of this, is you show strength or you get pushed around. That's all there is to it.
And that was also, bringing back to our original topic, that is kind of one of the themes of Starship Troopers too.
Counterpoint though, true and out of pressure.
That we were in Starship Troopers, we are one species in a hostile universe. And if we don't stand our ground, then we're going to go extinct. Because if it's not the bugs, somebody else will.
Oh, man. I just remember that line from that Cinema Wins video where he's just like, isn't it convenient that there are no civilian bugs? It's like, yeah, man, they don't breed civilian bugs. They're fucking bugs.
I mean, they probably have workers that do worker things, but they're still just bugs. I mean... Like ants. Ants have workers and they have warriors.
Well, that was his argument as to why it was fascist propaganda, is because, it's just convenient that all of the enemy can be killed instead of there being innocent civilian bugs that you have to avoid. Doesn't that make war so much easier?
We kill workers.
I despise these know-it-all little clowns with no experience with the real world.
Okay, point of order: we kill workers and civilians in actual human-on-human warfare quite frequently.
Well, if you're a fascist, you do.
Well, let's see, Schweinfurt.
So when we
Tokyo.
So when we firebombed
Dresden.
So he was opposed to that then.
Yes, because America is fascist.
Gotcha. This is tough. This is being anti-fascist seems to be like
he's a left-wing YouTuber who claims he's anti-fascist. He doesn't know what the fuck Dresden is.
Evidently, he doesn't know history, doesn't know philosophy, doesn't know politics.
He doesn't know cinema either, which sucks because his entire YouTube channel is based around that.
It's weird because this Whole thing kind of smells like giant pussy to me. I don't know. Kind of fishy.
Smells like,
Gross.
Would you like to cope more?
Would you like to cope more?
Yeah.
Oh man!
Like I said, the movie is good for the memes, and there are some good zingers in there. There are some good the little bits, some of the little bits of the propaganda, the actual propaganda reels in the movie are fun. They're even before all this, like when the movie came out, I remember seeing the making of thing about it where they interviewed the director, and he said he kind of wanted to make it look like World War II, like where you had the join now enlistment posters and everything. So even Paul Verhoeven changed his tune on that shit later on.
Well, because from just a little bit, and I've tried so desperately to ignore that hack ever since I first saw the movie. But just from particularly what's come out over the last couple of weeks when this has been the big subject, it's like the dude just pulls stuff out of his ass when he's talking to try and sound like he's smart.
What?
Which is probably why he has such a big fan base online, is because they all do the same shit.
Wait, I do that. Shut up.
I wasn't talking about you.
Oh, okay then.
No, I just pulled that out of my ass to sound smart.
Like you do. Now, so.
Well, fellas, we've been jawing for about 2.5 hours now.
Yeah, we should probably wrap this up. It's been fun. We've had good group chat tonight, but
it'd be weird if we spent like a week talking about this. Who would do that? You know what the best part about all this shit is that it's all spawned because of Helldivers 2. Nobody is fucking talking about Helldivers 2. Like,
no.
I haven't played the game. Like, I know people. I might get it at some point because I got like a bunch of people I know are playing it. But once I found out it was a third-person shooter, I kind of lost interest. I don't like third-person shooters.
I'm just gonna keep playing Gears Tactics.
They made the game Coop likes, and he's okay with it. They don't need to make any more.
Yeah. Well, no, they could make some expansion packs to it. I'd be fine with that, but
that's how you know how old that game is. They don't even call it DLC. It'd just be an expansion pack.
No, it's from like 2020, 2019, something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that recent.
Oh, it is. All I want is like a new game plus version of it. Okay, I just want to keep all the gear and levels I've made.
I have only recently rejoined the PC gaming master race, and I spent most of that time playing old games or indie games that don't require anywhere near the horsepower this rig has. So,
you and me both, brother.
Everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. It's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun.
It's been fascist.
Oh yeah, super fascist.
We will see you all next month sometime.